Dear students, I am Mr. English again, and this time I am with voice part 1. Voice is a very interesting topic, and if you don't have a good command over it, you cannot write or speak English very well. So let's talk about voice. And first, this is the part 1, voice part 1. And the first time we are going to describe about the verbs according to tense. That means to make a passive voice, we need some auxiliary verbs. Simple present tense takes am, is, are. Simple past tense takes was, were as auxiliary verb. Present continuous takes am, is, are plus being as auxiliary verb. Past continuous takes was, were plus being as auxiliary verb. Present perfect tense have, has plus been as an auxiliary verb. And if there is can, shall, will, must, need, is going to in a sentence, you have to use a be, and after that it will be V3. So these are the auxiliary verbs that we have to use in our passive sentences. Now let's talk about a basic pattern of a passive voice. First, the basic pattern, how a passive voice works. At first there will be a subject, there is or will be an auxiliary verb, and the auxiliary verb will depend on tense. If the sentence is simple present, it will take am, is, are. If the sentence is present continuous tense, it will take am, is, are plus being. Then the main verb will be V3, preposition by, on, to or as. Generally we see by, then object. Here is an example for you. Sandwiches are distributed by the teacher. What a good thing. Students are going to have sandwich in their classes. Oh wow, what a good class it is. Sandwiches, this is subject. Are, this is auxiliary verb, and the sentence is present simple. We have used here are. Then the main verb V3, distributed. Then there is a preposition, then the object. So subject, auxiliary verb, distributed, preposition, object. This is the basic pattern of a voice, passive voice. So dear students, I think you have understood these 2 points very well, because these will be the base of your making passive voice sentences. Let's go to part 2 and see what is in there. Dear students, now we will learn the basic rule of passive voice, how to make a passive voice, and this is very important. Please don't lose your attention. It's very important for you. This is a general subject sentence. The teacher distributes sandwiches. This is a general sentence. The teacher is the subject, distributes verb, or you can say it main verb, and sandwiches object. So subject, verb, object. Now be careful. At first, object will be subject. This is our object and it will be subject. This is sandwiches. This is our object. It has become our subject. Object will be subject, sandwiches. Auxiliary verb according to tense. Number 2, auxiliary verb according to tense. You have to bring an auxiliary verb and it will depend on tense. This sentence is present simple. This sentence is present simple. So present simple takes am, is, are. As sandwiches are plural, we take here are. Again remember, the teacher distributes sandwiches. This is a simple present tense, and a simple present tense takes am, is, or are as auxiliary verb. As our subject sandwich, it is plural, so we take are. Number 3, main verb will be V3. Main verb will be V3. Our main verb is distributes. It has become V3, distributed. Our main verb is distribute. It has become distributed. Preposition number 4. Preposition. We use by here. By here. 5. Subject will be object. Our subject is the teacher. It has become object, the teacher. So, these are the 5 steps to make a active sentence passive. First, you have object will be subject, sandwiches, auxiliary verb according to tense, as it is present simple tense are, main verb V3, distributed, preposition by, subject becomes object, the teacher. These 5 stages make these passive voice. Sandwiches are distributed by the teacher. So, this is our passive voice. And what is the formation of a passive voice? There is auxiliary subject, auxiliary verb V3, preposition by, object. Now, dear students, let us talk about another rule of passive voice. We have 2 rules here. Can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, is going to, must, be plus V3. That means if there is can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, is going to or must in a sentence, then we will use be and then V3. The company can estimate the price of the house. The price of the house, there is can, there is be, there is V3 estimated by company, by the company. So, can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, is going to, must. Then we have to use be and the main verb will be V3. So, this is the example again. The company can estimate the price of the house. The price of the house comes can. There is be. There is V3. Can be V3 by the company. The price of the house can be estimated by the company. Now, present perfect takes have or has plus been with it. Past perfect takes had plus been with it. He has encouraged the children to do well in the exam. The children, as it is plural, we have used have plus been plus V3 plus object. He has encouraged the children to do well in the exam. The children have been encouraged to do well in the exam. Tim's friend had told Mr. Lang about the matter. This is had, so we have to use been here. Mr. Lang had been told about the matter. So, remember this: can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, is going to, must, be plus V3. Present perfect have or has plus been plus V3. Past perfect had plus been plus V3. So, this is all together the rules of passive voice. And at the next video, we will learn more about the passive voice, and then we can have some practice together. Passive action, sentences without agent. That means sometimes there are sentences which doesn't contain an object. Sometimes, rule number 1, sometimes a passive sentence doesn't contain an object or agent. We do not know who did the action. That means it is not mentioned in the sentence who did the work. Henry's flat was sold yesterday. Henry's flat was sold. The work was done. But there is no mention who sold the flat. Dear students, don't fall in the trap. The sentence is Henry's flat was sold, but no mention who sold it. So this is a sentence which doesn't contain an agent or object. Henry's flat was sold yesterday. There is no mention who sold the flat, but the work is done. So these kinds of sentence doesn't have an object. This is called sentences without agent or object. Number 2, when the agent of an action is unimportant, we can leave it out. That means if the sentence tells us that the agent or object is not necessary, we can leave it. We don't have to mention the object in our passive sentences. Here is an example. People around warned us about the dangerous areas in that city. This is an active sentence. People warned us about the dangerous areas in that city. This is active sentence. The passive is we were warned about the dangerous areas in that city. We were warned about the dangerous areas of that city by people. Here, the agent or the object by people is unnecessary. So, we can leave it. We can write the sentence, we were warned about the dangerous areas in that city. That is all. We don't have to mention the agent here or object here because it is not necessary. Now, dear students, sentences with agent, that means sentences without object. We have 2 more rules here. Number 3, we usually leave out the agent in a passive sentence if the person or thing that did the action is obvious. Here, the whole rule means if we know who did the action, that means if we know who did the action, we do not have to use the agent anymore. Ellen writes her essays with humor and wit. This is active sentence, passive. Ellen's essays are written with humor and wit by Ellen. Here, it would be a problem if we do not write by Ellen, because Ellen's essays are written with humor and wit. Ellen writes it. As we know the subject or as we know the agent specifically, so we can leave it out. Ellen writes her essays with humor and wit. Ellen's essays are written with humor and wit. This is the passive. As we know about the agent or who did the action, so we can leave it out. Rule number 4. To describe a scientific experiment or a process, we leave the agent because our focus is on what happens and not who or what does the action. If we give our focus to the action, then it is not necessary to know who did the work. This is the summary of rule 4. That means if we know the person or thing who did the action, then it is not necessary to write it. And this is especially used in scientific experiment or in a process. Here is the example. The cans of pineapple cubes are sent on a conveyor belt by someone to a machine where they are sealed by the machine. This is by someone. We know the pineapple cubes are sent by someone. It cannot be done by itself. And the second is sealed by the machine. We know the machine sealed the cans. So, as it is in a process, It's in a working process. So we don't have to use the isn't anymore. We can leave it out. Then it will not be a problem. So I hope sentences without isn't or object is clearly understood by you by now, and it will be more fruitful if you continue the practice. The more you practice, the more you learn. This is the whole thing. Dear students, I know it's a long video, but don't be bored, please. And this is the last item. We use by or with. Which one? We use with refers to instrument used by someone. My mailbox with junk mail over the weekend refers to the instrument used by someone. So, this is junk mail and this is used by someone. So, we have used here with. And there is another thing. Basically, there are some verbs which takes with if they are used in passive. Cram, crowd, decorate, fill, throng. The stadium is crowded with people today. This is crowded and it takes with it. Another passive action is waiting for you, and keep the patience. This is the last one. To be. You know to be what is? Am is or was were. Suppose to plus be1. This is one kind of passive formation. That means that am is or was were plus suppose to, then v1. The judge is supposed to give the verdict anytime now. The judge is supposed to give the verdict anytime now. This is wrong, because as there is a be, it should be supposed, not suppose. Here suppose, no. In passive action, you have to use supposed. The judge is supposed to give the verdict anytime now. So here we have used supposed here to give the verdict anytime now. So dear students, I think it's a long video, and it's a matter of patience that you have watched it attentively, and I hope if you watch this video attentively and make practice from your grammar book, then you will learn about the passive action very quickly. And again and again, remember this. Passive action is very important. Without passive action, you cannot write or you cannot speak well. So, keep patience and watch the video carefully and make practice. All the best. See you on next video when we will come with a new one. Till then, bye.